Hi everyone, I'm Monique. Welcome back to part 2 of Shifting Your Career Trajectory. I really hope you've been enjoying the June topics for the Love Yourself project. I'm really super excited that I was invited to be involved in this. I've done 2 topics so far. The first one was under the Healthy Body series, and that was clean eating basics. So hopefully you had a chance to catch those 2 videos. And then this topic is under the Healthy Business segment, and it's part 2 of Shifting Your Career Trajectory. So if you had the benefit of coming to the first video, you would have also hopefully appeared at the workshop with the workbook. Now, this is a continuation. So today we're going to talk a little more in depth about what to do if you're shifting your career trajectory. And just as a little bit of background on me, in case you missed the other videos, I am an executive coach. I work with very busy, very driven corporate executives on a daily basis. Many of them have plans to shift their career to move into a higher level position or change careers altogether or change companies. Some are even deciding to leave the corporate sector and own businesses. I also work with business owners who are trying to shift their services or their type of business. So they're making some kind of transition. I am also working with people who are retiring from the corporate sector or the small business sector, and they are looking for what the next phase of their life will look like. So if you are any of those people, you have come to the right place for clarification on where to go next. So today we're going to talk about some tips in upgrading your resume, refreshing your LinkedIn profile, gaining visibility and networking, which is really tough for a lot of people, and preparing for the interview. Now, before we get started, there's a couple of just housekeeping items I want to go over. As you know, if you've been attending the June events, there are different types of content available to you. So with this topic, there is this on-demand video, and then there's part 1 that you can have access to, and you would have signed up in a link that brought you to these videos and that notifies you when there's other content available. There is a workshop that will be conducted next week that will take the information from this video, and we will go more in depth with it. Now, the workshop is very interactive, so please come prepared to share questions, concerns that you ran into as you were trying to do this kind of work that I'm teaching you about. We're limiting the workshops to a small group of people because I want it to be very interactive. So please be sure that you have registered for it so that you have a spot there. The third piece of content is the workbook. Now, hopefully, if you came to the first video and watched the first video, you have already downloaded the workbook. If not, it's still available to you. So please go ahead and download it. That workbook is for your benefit only. I'm not going to see it. You don't need to hand it in, you don't need to talk about what's in it when you're in the workshop, but it's for you to document this whole process I'm taking you through. It's really important that you get these steps and this process on paper and customize it to your own situation. So the workbook has several modules in it, and after the first video, you should have completed the first module. After today, I will ask you to complete the second module before you come to the second workshop. So please feel free to do that when we're finished here. Okay, let's get started and let's talk about your resume. Now, a lot of the executives that I work with really struggle with this. Some of them have been in their corporate position for 10 or 20 years. They have not updated their resume. They haven't needed to, and they haven't interviewed. They haven't updated their LinkedIn profile. And then comes the time when they need to, or they want to, or they're going to be interviewing internally or externally, and they need to have something a little more updated. So at the last video, we talked about accomplishment statements. So this is how we're going to use those. In your resume, That's the place for many of your accomplishment statements. Gone are the days when your resume should list your job tasks. It shouldn't look like a job description. It should look like the accomplishments that you have really achieved during your career. So that's why we use the accomplishment statements that we developed in Module 1 of the workbook. You will incorporate those into your resume. Your resume should be very concise and very relevant. Now, in the workshop, we will go more into detail about this, but you want short statements, not paragraphs. You want them bullet pointed throughout. You want to list relevant information, titles, companies, dates of employment, and then the most important thing will be the accomplishment statements. Your resume length, we can go more into that at the workshop, but it's going to vary. There are a couple of rules about that, and we'll talk about that in more depth. But if you can fit all relevant information onto one page, kudos to you. That is really good. That is ideal if you can do that. If you can't do that, no worries. Not everybody can. Some people have worked at multiple places throughout their career and they are all relevant, so they have to be listed. Some people have only worked in one place for 30 years. So it depends on your situation, and that's the reason for the workshop. We're going to customize the conversation a little bit. So try to keep it concise and relevant. Whatever you think the employer needs to know about you should be in the resume. Now, it's easy to keep it concise if you follow one rule. You are going to discuss what's in your resume in the interview. So it's not meant for a lot of detail and paragraphs in the resume. You want to put enough in the resume to spark the attention of the employer. And then when you get into the interview, then you expand upon those bullet points in the resume. A lot of people say to me, you know, this doesn't say the whole story. It doesn't tell enough. It doesn't give the explanation. There's a lot more that they need to know. Save it for the interview. Trust me, if you put all of that in a resume, you will not get an interview. So you really want to keep your bullet points short and concise and relevant. Now, there are many different types of resume templates, and we can, again, go into more detail in the workshop, but it's going to really depend on your preference. You'll want to research various styles that are already out there, because you want it to fit who you are as a person. And yes, that does involve the style of the resume. It can fit who you are and what resonates with you. So it's really easy you can go to LinkedIn, you can go to monster.com and pull up some resumes of people that are in the position you want to be in. So if you're trying to get to corporate vice president, go online and research resumes, pull up actual resumes of corporate vice presidents and take a look at what they're doing and what they're saying in the resumes. And that should make your decision a little bit easier. You always want to list your career highlights at the top of the resume. And that could be a very short paragraph, like 3 sentences, not half of the page, but highlights. And these are different than your accomplishment statements. The accomplishment statements go way more into detail than what your career highlight would be. So the paragraph you want it to be clear and concise and well written with a few highlights, and then you go into more detail with your accomplishment statements. Your accomplishment statements should tie in to your career highlights. Always check your spelling. This will never get you an interview if you have bad spelling, and it happens a lot in resumes. Even 1 or 2 words might be misspelled, and it completely throws off the recruiter or the hiring manager because it shows a lack of attention to detail. So something as simple as spelling could get you disqualified. And if you think about it, there are hundreds of candidates going for these positions. It's unfortunate that there is so much competition, but that's reality. So the hiring manager or the recruiter, they are looking for reasons to disqualify you, to shrink their pool of people that they have to talk with. So you want to make sure that your resume is as perfect as possible. And do what you can and then leave it alone. There's no sense in obsessing over it once you have done as much as you think you can. And in my coaching sessions, I always look over the resume. I'm a second set of eyes. We have many sessions involved in, brainstorming the resume, looking it over. I point things out. We brainstorm, well, should that be in there or should we pull that out? So have a second set of eyes look at your resume to make sure everything is spelled correctly and that it's very concise. All right, let's talk about using LinkedIn. So right now, LinkedIn is the platform where many employers are going, employers and recruiters, to find their people. It is a very, very busy platform. And it's designed for business people. If you are a business person in any sense of the word, you need to have a LinkedIn profile. Now, in the workshop, you'll get many resources about how to create a profile. So you can do that on your own. And if you happen to do it before you come to the workshop, and if you want to bring a link to your profile, I will be happy in the workshop to take just a few brief minutes and glance over it and give you my opinion. I just really, really impress upon you to have a profile with an updated photo and updated profile the way that the resources tell you. The resources that I'm going to send you will tell you that it should be updated. So in the LinkedIn profile, you can incorporate your accomplishment statements. Again, you can list career highlights at the top. Now, the LinkedIn profile does not have to be an exact mirror of your resume. I do know some people who do it that way, and it's not necessary. It can be a much shorter version. It can be a little more informal than a resume. And there's a place in LinkedIn where you can list volunteer work. There's a lot more information that can go there that can tell the employer who you are as a person. So I would recommend, if you have done volunteer work, to definitely list that in LinkedIn. Employers are looking for well-rounded individuals. So if you've done volunteer work or if you've offered your services in other ways, internships recently, list all of that in LinkedIn. Again, check your spelling. It happens all the time. People's LinkedIn profiles are not grammatically correct and they have spelling errors in them. So you want to check that. Now, recruiters are using LinkedIn for opportunities to reach out. Sometimes they don't even have a position open. But LinkedIn can be used for networking, for professional networking. And there is a huge benefit in using LinkedIn for that reason. You can find a job so much quicker by networking than you can by just randomly sending your resume out to job postings, because hundreds of people are doing the same thing. But if you want to really network, there are ways to do it within LinkedIn that you can target specific recruiters, you can target specific employers, and really log into LinkedIn, look at their company profile, get to know their company, see who else works for the company, see if you're connected to those people on LinkedIn who are working for the company, because there's a strategy that you can use to get more information about a company from people who work there. And this is done all the time, and people are happy to offer information. People are happy to network and to help. You just have to be very transparent as to what you're doing, that you're interested in the company and you're looking for open positions. So we will talk more in the workshop about the actual strategy, and there will be some information in your workbook about that too. But LinkedIn, very, very important that you use that tool for your networking and for your job search. Now, let's talk a little more about networking. Many people do not want to do this, especially if you're more on the introverted side. Networking is critical, whether it's on LinkedIn or in person or some other social media platform. It is critical that you network. If you're a business owner, it's critical that you network. You've got to find ways to get your clients, so you have to build relationships. Now, right now, because of the state of the situation in our world, networking is more powerful if it's done virtually. And that's pretty much how we have to do it now anyway, and it'll probably be that way for a while. So it's a must. And if you think of networking as just a conversation, that's all it is. It's just a conversation. You're not trying to sell a product. You're not even trying to sell yourself right away for a job. You're just trying to have a conversation and get to know people. So there is a strategy involved in that. There is a way to use LinkedIn or any other kind of networking opportunity to just get to know people. And we'll talk more about that in the workshop also. But ideally, you want to aim for 3 hours a week of networking. And what that means online, if you're doing it online, is about 6 30-minute conversations per week. I'm sorry, not per day. 6 30-minute conversations per week. And again, these are just conversations. And during a conversation, you're pretty much wanting to get to know all about them. You're saying very little about yourself unless they ask you. And it should be a two-way conversation. Most of the time, they will be asking you about yourself to tell them about you or about your business or your skill set or what it is, how they can help you. But if you aim for 3 hours a week of networking, you will have so many opportunities opened up for you. You will have opportunities you didn't even look for that suddenly open up to you. So it's really important to grow your network that way and to get to know people. And you never know when they might come back to you a year later because they remembered something special about you that you told them about. So it's very important to start the networking now. All right, what about the interview? This really scares people. There's a lot of preparation that goes into being ready for an interview. So the way I prepare my executives is that I help them determine what kind of employment package they want. This includes the financial piece, the benefits, what kind of time off, are they going to be working remotely or on site? We talk about all of that, the things that are important to the person looking for the job. This is why it's important for them to know their values, their personal values and their work values. Because if you aren't sure what's important to you, when it comes to preparing for the interview, you won't know what you want. So you have to know this ahead of time to determine the package. I always suggest that they aim high so that they can leave room for negotiation. So determine what you want based on your work and personal values. And then, as we talked about a little bit earlier, determine what areas you can compromise in. Leave yourself wiggle room to compromise. You don't have to ask for the world on a silver platter. You can leave yourself some wiggle room. You don't ever want to shut any doors in the conversation with potential employers. Again, even if you decide to turn them down, you want to do it in a polite and professional way, leaving the door open. So you never know when you may need to tap into them in a year or two, and you want them to remember you as being polite and as having handled the conversation in a really professional, poised way. In an interview, use empathy and open-ended questions. This is really important because this shows who you are as a person. So you want to ask them questions that are open-ended so that they have to come back with conversation. It should be a two-way conversation, not a period where you're being just drilled and you're answering yes or no and they are answering yes or no. It should be a really relaxed conversation. And your empathy skills should be very apparent. If you are in any kind of leadership position, and even not a leader in the formal sense of the word, you still want to display empathy always when you're dealing with people or working with people. It's a very, very highly coveted skill and characteristic of emotional intelligence. And it's very sought after in the workplace. So if you aren't good at empathy, there are ways to develop it, and don't feel bad because I work with a lot of my leaders to help them become more empathetic. Also, very important, you want to understand the use of behavioral interview questions. This is a technique that's very common now in interviewing. It used to be where the employer would say something like, can you handle conflict? And then you would say yes. If you want the job, you would say yes, sure, I can. Well, now it's more like, tell me about a time when you had to handle conflict. Tell me the situation, who was involved, what you said, and what was the outcome. 4 components. Now, you can't just pull these out of your head in the moment. You need to know this ahead of time, and you need to practice this. So in the workbook, there is a link to a list of standard behavioral interview questions. And I usually have my executives print that off, and they start to fill in their story, their answers to these questions. They fill in scenarios of, this is how I handled conflict. It was this kind of a situation. This is how I handled a really tough project. This is how I handled a missed deadline. All of these are behavioral interview questions. The employer wants to know how you personally have handled something, not how you might handle it in the future, how you did handle it in the past. So I have my executives fill out the questionnaire, bring it to coaching, and we role play and we practice. And it has helped so much for them to be prepared in an interview because they are always asked behavioral interview questions. Okay, that is it for today. I hope this information was helpful. And yes, these were some really quick bullet pointed topics for this session. But I really want you to come to the workshop with the workbook so that we can go into more detail together, and I can help you customize the information for your specific situation. So as a coach, as always, there's some action items, some next steps for you. Download the slide deck that comes with this video. And I'm speaking to you from the slide deck. You haven't been seeing it, but it is available to you if you want just the basic bullet points that I went through with you. Download the workbook if you haven't already. Complete module 2 in the workbook because that will coincide with this video. Register for the second workshop while there is still space available. And then attend the second workshop and come prepared with your questions. That's really important to be prepared. And you will learn from other people also. You will be listening to what they're saying and what I'm saying and the conversation and the interaction. So you will learn a lot in that workshop. But please bring your questions. It's the only chance you'll have to ask them and to get help with the workbook. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this. I've really enjoyed talking to all of you, and I will see you soon at the workshop. Bye-bye.